Alright guys, today we are going to fix my 1981 Ford Fairmont Station Wagon. And my goal is to get the thing ready for the 2024 Atlas Nationals. To pick up where we left off, the car ended up hurting cylinder number 3 at 6 Summer 2024. So to fix this issue, we pretty much have to go back to square one and build a new engine. So let's go to some footage of that. To begin, we needed to pull the old engine out of the car and get it torn apart and inspected. If you guys followed our 6 Summer coverage, you know that we already partially tore the engine down, and it's time to take it the rest of the way down. So we removed the rods and pistons and inspected how things were wearing in. We've been running this engine for quite a while, and it has seen a lot of abuse. It has seen over 40 pounds of boost and lots of back pressure in the exhaust, which is pretty hard on stuff. So this provided us a great time to actually see how things were wearing and see if maybe there's some improvements that we could make. Two areas of particular interest to me were to see how the bearings were wearing. These engines are pretty long, and in high performance applications, they are known to wear the main bearings unevenly, especially with lots of horsepower. Now, I have had to tear the mains off of this engine before to replace the thrust bearing, since that failed at some point during its life. And when I did this, I noticed the main bearings were pretty tore up. There were some pretty deep grooves in the crankshaft, and frankly, it probably should have been rebuilt at that point. Unfortunately, I didn't have time for that. I wanted to get the car to 6 Summer at the time, and I decided to take a shortcut and pretend like I didn't see the main bearing wear, and this is a great time to see if it got any worse. Another area of interest are the piston skirts. The skirts of the pistons on these engines take a lot of abuse. They have a 4-inch stroke and a relatively short connecting rod, and they also pull the piston pretty far out of the bottom of the bore, and the skirts just don't have an easy existence in a 4200. I was quite happily surprised to see that they were doing pretty good. All things considered, these skirts look great. Unfortunately, I did not get video of this, but the main bearing wear did not get any worse since the time that I did the thrust bearing, so that was good to see. One last area of interest is the problem child. This is the reason that this engine has been torn apart. We melted that piston pretty good. So let's move on to building the new engine. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, what you see next to me is an engine, believe it or not. This has been sitting outside for about a year or so, and it's been getting rained on and, you know, beaten on by the sun. You see we put a tarp over it, but that tarp kind of tore a long time ago, so I'm gonna see if this thing is a pile of junk or not. We have other engines, but this one's been sitting outside for so long that if we don't do something with it soon, it probably really will be junk. So I'm going to pull this out and tear the cylinder head off of it and see how the cylinder bores on it are. And this may be the new engine for the Fairmont wagon. So let's get to work. Alright, so far so good. I just took the coils out, and the only one that has water in it is the most rear one, so I'd say we're doing alright. It really doesn't have that much liquid in it, even though it does have some. Just pop the valve cover off. Continues to look good. I mean, there's a few little bits of rust here, but nothing crazy, so it's probably fine. If you guys followed the North Star engine build that we did, you'll know that we tried this tool called a bolt knocker. And I wanted to try this on the cylinder head bolts for the 4200 because they are very prone to breaking. And unfortunately, it didn't work very well. I ended up breaking quite a few of them, and we just had to use our tried and true method of just a left-hand drill bit and some easy outs, and they came right out just like they always do. So unfortunately, the bolt knocker doesn't really look like it's going to be the ticket to getting the head bolts out of a 4200 without breaking them. Alright, the engine has officially made it to the inside of the building. This thing looks pretty usable, the bores look pretty good on it, and you can tell that the head has been off of it at some point in its life. They obviously had to helicoil the head bolts in a couple of spots, which is pretty common, but nothing looks too bad, and we're going to give it a shot. The bolt knocker ended up working fantastic on the main bolts though. I didn't break a single one of them. And we installed some main studs. If you guys don't know, nobody offers main studs for these engines, but you can use a BMW 1.8 liter, I think it is, head stud from ARP, and you can install it in these engines as main studs. Now, moving on to the pistons. The pistons that I was using in this engine are a Wiseco piston that is designed for an EJ20 Subaru engine, specifically a stroked out EJ20. These pistons have to be slightly modified from how they are received from Wiseco, and I decided to buy 4 replacement pistons, thinking that I would just replace the one that was burnt up and the other 3 would be spares. However, we found out that the other pistons in the engine actually had a significant amount of skirt wear. I measured the piston to wall clearance for the new pistons versus the used pistons, and well, unfortunately, I had to pick the best of the 2 used pistons, and they were a little bit looser than what I wanted them to be. And we ended up putting all 4 new pistons into the engine with 2 used ones. Next, it was time to toss the cylinder head back onto the engine. If you guys don't remember, this is the Faster Proms ported cylinder head, the last cylinder head that LS George ever ported, and this received a little bit of damage from the whole situation as well. Luckily, it was relatively minor. In fact, it was mostly just metal deposits on the valves and the port, and the thing cleaned up pretty good. Now that the engine was rebuilt and we were pretty much ready to rock with that, we had a few upgrades that I wanted to perform. The engine failed because of a fuel delivery issue on cylinder number 3, and I totally wanted to rethink everything on this car. I have been fighting this car since we put it together. It's been transmission issues, engine issues, you know, you name it. It's been issue after issue with this car. And I decided that let's just start completely over. And we basically went through every single component in the engine bay, and we've either made a tweak or completely replaced everything that you see. The reason I chose to do this was I am sick and tired of chasing issues. And there are a lot of common sense things that we know will perform better that I decided to just go ahead and upgrade because I am sick and tired of dealing with crap. And I am looking for the most optimal setup for what I am doing. So we started off with the intercooler. Now, I have been running a 3.5-inch core intercooler on the car since I put the 6-cylinder in the car. And I will say that I have seen a similar sized intercooler go to pretty high horsepower levels. In fact, my dad's 2010 Camaro SS is actually a very similar sized intercooler, and we have seen that go way over 800 horsepower very easily. That being said, my dad and some other people have been saying that the intercooler is the problem. So I decided, okay, let's put the absolute largest possible intercooler on the car. A larger intercooler cannot possibly hurt, so that's what we did. One of my goals with this car has been to make the car look as stock as possible. I have always loved sleepers, and therefore I have been interested in keeping the factory grille structure, factory bumper, and I don't want to move things around too much or make things obvious as to, you know, give away how much power this thing makes. So we got to work building this monstrosity that you see right here, and it was quite a bit of work. I had to take the two cores and cut them down and then weld a section of the one to the other. But I was able to squeeze this behemoth into the front of the car. Unfortunately, I had to lose my lower valence. That was my choice. I wanted to get as much intercooler in the car as possible, and I chose to get rid of it. And I will be putting a chin spoiler on the car at some point, but we haven't gotten there yet. What we ended up with was a 4.5-inch thick by 22 by 17-inch core, and this should result in like 80% more flow area across the core. So hopefully that reduces a little bit of the pressure drop across the core, and also we got a lot more cross-sectional area for the air to flow through, so it should be better in every way. Now, one thing we need to talk about with this intercooler setup is it is now blocking quite a bit of the airflow to my radiator. And I've already run the car a little bit and it's beginning to overheat. So we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to get more airflow through this radiator, because on hot days this thing gets pretty warm. But we will figure that out in future videos. But just wanted to mention it because it's something you should consider when upgrading to a larger intercooler. Next up, you will notice that the intake has changed on the car. At 6 Summer, I was running the Artec cast intake manifold that they are working on developing, and unfortunately, that had to go. The intake performed okay, but my plans are to be feeding fuel into this intake manifold. So I was very concerned about the fuel distribution of that intake manifold, and therefore I wanted to build a center feed style intake manifold. Additionally, the runner length on the Artec intake We have seen that a shorter intake runner actually is better for the operating conditions that we are running at, and therefore I wanted to go to a shorter runner. Now this was quite a bit of effort. It is a billet set of intake runners that I had machined, and then I built a intake plenum for it. And parts of this intake manifold were built out of an air intake from a dump truck, actually. What is that? Some weight on there. Where did that come from? Overall, I am very happy with how this thing came out, and you will see in some future videos where we will flow this thing, and I will show you that it has very good distribution for the fuel and air, so look forward to that. Additionally, I had a pretty crude setup here on my fuel rail setup. And I'm very excited to announce our partnership on this fuel rail right here. This was produced by a company called Atlas Industries, and they are working on developing a whole bunch of Atlas engine series parts, one of which is what you see right here. This is a stainless steel fuel rail that they manufacture in-house. It has the injector bosses here, which are set up for the factory injector safety clips. It is set up for a center feed or a pass-through style design, however you like to run your fuel. And it is a very high quality piece. I am super happy with how that came out. And we should get much better fuel distribution with this particular setup. So with our new intake, new intercooler, new engine, and future plans for methanol injection, we were pretty much ready to head to the track. Now I will mention that we just barely made it. We literally fired this thing up at 1:00 p.m. The day before the event, and with a 7.5 hour drive to the event, we definitely were cutting it close. And I'm super thankful to my dad, mom, brother for helping out in the last stretch there. And it was really good to make it to the event with this car. So, enough teasing, let's go to some footage from the event. Being that it was such a difficult time to get the Fairmont to the event, we decided to take things a little bit more mild for the Atlas Nationals. We did not have time to hook up the secondary fuel system on the car, so I was limited to one set of injectors, and therefore I had to keep the boost relatively low. For my first pass, I was initially thinking about only running it to the 1/8, but I looked at the data on my dash and it felt good, so I stayed in it a little bit longer. Considering I let off at 1,000 feet and the boost was 10 psi lower than what I ran at sick week, this was a very encouraging result. For my next pass, I decided to run it the whole way out since the data looked good. So let's see what happens.
953 at 145.26.
The car slowed down a little bit, and the reason for this is I accidentally short shifted the car. Right as it was about to start making power, I pulled the shifter into the next gear, and I should have let the thing rev out a little bit more. The astute among you will have noticed that the injector duty cycle has gotten pretty high on this combination, and I'm going to have to get my secondary fuel system hooked up to go further, so we only made 2 passes with this car at the Atlas Nationals. Overall, we had a fantastic time at the 2024 Atlas Nationals, and if you didn't make it to the event, you missed out. It was great to meet a lot of you guys out there, and I hope that if you didn't make it this year, you plan on attending next year, because it is going to be even bigger for the next time, and I think it is worth your time. But that is not the only car that we took to the Atlas Nationals. We also took my dad's 2010 Camaro SS, but we will go over the efforts to get that car to the event and how it did in the next video. So make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.